Hello, everybody, and welcome back to WST Deep Dive. My name is Liz, as always, and I am joined by Connor, my co-host. Welcome back to our series where we dive into some specific topics that Winnipeg Jets fans are interested in and want to learn more about. So today, as you could tell by the title of the video or the podcast, if you're listening on audio, we are talking about Winnipeg Jets defensive prospect Elias Salomonsson. Connor, how are you doing today? And what are we going to talk about?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. I'm super excited to do this deep dive because if you've been following the Jets and their prospects over the past year or since this player was drafted in 2022, no stock has really risen more than Elias Salomonsson's in terms of prospects after being drafted in the second round. And that's where he was drafted 55th overall in the 2022 draft for the Winnipeg Jets. He's from Skellefteå, Sweden, 6'2", 185-pound right shot defenseman, and he is 20 years old, currently playing for the Manitoba Moose. And a lot of the media that we're going to use today is from his time in the Swedish League last season or from his time in the short games here with the Manitoba Moose. So super excited for this deep dive. A lot of people are curious. A lot of people asked for this one. So Elias Salomonsson, let's dive right into it. Liz, where do you want to start with Elias Salomonsson?
Okay, maybe before we get into all like the nitty-gritty fun stuff that we often talk about in this show, we'll get into all that. I kind of just want to talk about the acquisition of this player for a second because he is a Winnipeg Jets draft pick, but he was not originally supposed to be a Winnipeg Jets draft pick. This is a pick that was acquired in a trade that the Winnipeg Jets made. And if you're a Jets fan, you know that this trade is the gift that keeps on giving. Just thought we'd outline this for you here because as the younger pieces and the lottery tickets that were part of this trade continue to develop, this trade starts looking even better. In 2022, the Winnipeg Jets traded Andrew Kopp at the trade deadline for a haul of picks and young players. The main player attached to that one was Morgan Barron, who's been a staple on that fourth line, who's been a really good energy piece for the Winnipeg Jets for his whole career here so far. But the picks were the question marks around this trade. And so far, all three of them are looking really great. Obviously, we know about Brad Lambert. We did a deep dive on him this summer. If you haven't watched it yet, that's a really good one to check out to learn more about that player. And the Manitoba Moose starting goalie, Thomas Milic, was also acquired in that trade. So this trade is starting to look pretty good. Elias Salomonsson could be one of the most interesting parts of this trade, though. He is a very, very interesting player that we're going to kind of dive into, obviously, a little bit more today. So far, though, as a piece of this trade, it's looking like a pretty good deal for the Winnipeg Jets, seeing as Andrew Kopp did not even re-sign in New York. He was kind of always, I think, planning on going to Detroit if they would have him, which they did. Looking pretty good. Nice work, Kevin Cheveldayoff. And kind of let's dive into the defenseman that came back in this trade.
Absolutely. And the one thing I'll remember about this trade is the 2022 first only would have been a first round pick if the Rangers had won 2 series. So I remember Jets fans online were always cheering for the Rangers in that playoff run. They made it to the third round, not any further than that. They lost in the third round. But since they did, that went from a late second round pick to the 30th overall pick. And they selected Brad Lambert. We've done a deep dive on him. Obviously, one of the most polarizing Jets prospects. But yeah, a great deal for the Winnipeg Jets. And before we dive into Elias Salomonsson's strengths, Liz and I actually went down to a Manitoba Moose game and talked to head coach Mark Morrison. So before we give you what we've seen on the film, let's hear from Mark Morrison what he had to say about Elias Salomonsson.
Well, he's been real good. I mean, especially since these are his first pro games in North America. He's getting used to the small rink, and he's just making huge strides every game for us. Plays both special teams, runs our number one power play, and he gets better every game.
So there it is, Manitoba Moose head coach Mark Morrison talking about Elias Salomonsson, who is playing a massive role for the Manitoba Moose this season. And one thing he brought up, and everyone brings up on the scouting reports of Elias Salomonsson, is the skating. And personally, I think that that's going to really help Salomonsson make that transition from the bigger ice surface over in Sweden over to North America, where the game's a little bit tighter, but he can use that skating. Liz, Salomonsson, everyone says it's one of his biggest strengths. What did you see when breaking down the film with Elias?
Yeah, I mean, being a good skater is a really important attribute for an NHL player to have because it impacts every part of your game. Skating is always happening. You are always skating, right? So you can talk about guys, if they struggle to shoot, well, you know what, maybe they're good at other aspects of the game and stuff like that. But skating is just so huge and crucial. But on its own, Jets fans have had some criticism of guys like Rasmus Kupari last year, who's a great skater. But if you aren't using that and it's not translating into offensive production or really positive impacts on the ice, what does it really mean? Elias Salomonsson is one of those guys where he is an incredible skater. He's a phenomenal skater. and it translates to having a positive impact in a lot of different areas of his game. So I wanted to pull up a clip from him when he was playing in Sweden last year. This is a situation here where he's the player that has the green circle around him and the puck is on the boards. This is a breakout coming from his own zone. Elias Salomonsson is pretty good at the stretch pass and everything like that. He's a good defensive defenseman, but he's also a really phenomenal skater. So in a situation like this, the speed and the comfort of breaking up the ice with the puck gives his forwards more options. So you can see the winger has the puck on the boards here, and he's moving it up towards the guy who's on the blue line. Elias Salomonsson suddenly becomes an option for this player. So it's passed up to the center who's sitting there on the red line and has the puck. Elias Salomonsson becomes like another winger in this situation that gives the guy an option, especially when you're, stopped on the ice. You don't have that speed that's gearing you up to enter the zone. Elias Salomonsson is there. So this is an example of how, being a good skater is really, really important, and it can have a positive impact on the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the offensive upside that Elias Salomonsson has. And like you said, skating affects everything in a game, but offensively, when you want these defensemen to be able to jump into the rush, that was a big thing that Rick Bowness talked about when he showed up to Winnipeg is, the defense isn't generating enough offense, and you need to be a good skater to be able to jump into the rush and have that impact. But here's an example actually of Elias Salomonsson creating offense just in the zone. This is off of a face-off, and he's able to find this player in the middle of the ice. As you can see by the red arrow there, the defender's a little bit off, not really on his guy, and he's able to make that cross-seam pass, and this player ends up scoring a goal on this play as well. So this is just another example of having good offensive instincts, knowing when to jump into the rush. That's something that we might talk about later on. But he does have the skating ability and the offensive instincts to make plays in the offensive zone. And like we've said, and like Mark Morrison said, he's an all-around defenseman. So Lyss, on the defensive side of things, what have you seen from Elias Salomonsson that might be a strength?
Yeah, so I like to put Elias Salomonsson into this category of big, heavy-hitting defenseman who's also good at hockey, right? Because those things are not always synonymous, and I am the, leader of that club of, just because a guy is laying out crazy hits or a guy is considered to be physical, it doesn't mean he's good at hockey. Elias Salomonsson is good at hockey, and part of that is how he's able to manage players in his own zone. So we wanted to pull up a couple clips of actually a recent game of the Manitoba Moose against the Milwaukee Admirals. You can see Elias Salomonsson is following the puck into this corner here. He's a right-handed defenseman. He's on his own side here. This is his puck. This is his responsibility. Reed Schaefer is the player here. If you're not familiar with Reed Schaefer, he's a U.S. program prospect who plays for the Milwaukee Admirals, who's very, very talented, very, very strong. So he's in the corner here with Elias Salomonsson. My favorite part about this play is that Elias Salomonsson follows him all the way back. So all of a sudden, when Reed Schaefer returns to the front of the net, Elias Salomonsson is there tying up that stick all the way through. Tying up the stick using the body, tying up the stick using his own stick, all these different ways to make sure that Reed Schaefer is not a threat in this particular situation. Milwaukee has control of the puck. Reed Schaefer was the one who got it out of that corner board battle there. But he doesn't turn into a threat afterwards because Elias Salomonsson does such a good job of turning him into an obsolete threat in this situation. So that's what I really like about this player. We talked about the skating having an impact in all the zones and having some good offensive instincts. But at the end of the day, it's his responsibility to defend that net front. And he does a really, really fantastic job of that, which is something that the Winnipeg Jets do need. Every hockey team needs, but managing players in front of the net in that danger zone, in that diamond, is huge. And Elias Salomonsson has the potential to be really strong in that area, a very aggressive player, and it translates into him managing guys that front really, really well.
Yeah, and that was another thing that's been an emphasis for the Winnipeg Jets coaching staff over the past couple of years. You have Connor Hellebuyck, you have the Vezina Trophy winner. If he's able to see the puck, there's a pretty good chance he's able to stop it. So clearing guys out from that front of the net, and that's another layer to that physicality.
Yeah, if you even go back to the last picture from that clip, you could see wide open. Thomas Milic has all the view in the world of that particular shot.
Yeah, absolutely. And this gives the goaltender an advantage. And it's another layer to that physicality that I know Jets fans really value because, you see Elias Salomonsson throw these big hits, whether it's in the World Juniors, the one that got him suspended. I know that's a dirty hit, but he does pop up on social media feeds for these massive hits, despite only being 185 pounds, but he's a bigger right-hand shot defenseman, right? But not only is it the big hits and playing that physical style, it's in the front of the net, clearing guys out and giving Thomas Milic a lane here to be able to see this puck, which really adds a layer to that physicality and gives him that all-around game that you see people mention all the time in the scouting reports on Elias Salomonsson.
So when it comes to Elias Salomonsson, we can talk about it's actually interesting. When we talked about Colby Barlow, we talked about how, it's a positive that this player likes to be aggressive and stuff like that, but it can also turn into a weakness a little bit when, someone like Colby Barlow, who's a little bit more flat-footed, sometimes takes himself out of plays. Elias Salomonsson falls into a similar category. It's not because he's slow, it's simply because of his position. When you play defense, taking yourself out of plays has higher impacts than when you're a forward in your own zone, right? And this is a good example of, while it's not necessarily in his own zone, an example of what happens when you finish a check that you don't necessarily need to do. Elias Salomonsson in this situation is the player in the dark blue, and you can see in that first photo that he is not close to that puck. That puck is going towards the boards, and he's pinching up to go get this puck, which again, I'm a huge fan of jumping on 50-50 pucks in the right situation. So you can see that the Milwaukee player is kind of chasing after this puck, and Elias Salomonsson decides to also do that. You can see again here is an even closer shot. He is not going to be first on this puck, and he is the defenseman in this situation. Elias Salomonsson follows the check all the way through in this photo, and the puck is gone immediately. And this is always my issue with defensemen who are known to be strong hitters, is that if the hit takes you out of the play and it doesn't have an impact, this isn't a 7-game playoff series here where we're trying to wear down the body or galaxy brain these situations. You're not having a positive impact on your touch on the puck in this situation. That's not a good thing. And so when you have a player who's a little bit more aggressive, you can see the circle's not even in the frame anymore at this point. And this puck is going into Elias Salomonsson's own zone on his side because he's the right shot defenseman, right? So everyone else has to accommodate. I understand that, players can cover for other players when they pinch up and do all those sorts of things, but this is a situation in which that was avoidable. And that's something to watch out for with players who are a little bit more aggressive, that do like to finish their hits. Even though Elias Salomonsson is a good skater, so are a lot of other players in the AHL and in the NHL as well when he transitions to that level. So you just have to be careful in situations like that where you could turn this into a little bit of a problem.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. And another way that he is aggressive, and we talked about it earlier, is that ability to jump into the rush. And he's a great skater, and you want to see him do that. But now and again, he gets himself into trouble where he's jumping into the rush at inopportune times. Like you said, stepping up for that check at a time where he's not going to get to that puck. Here's an example of a game this year against Rockford where he is behind the net. He's in that red circle. The puck is in the green. And the Manitoba Moose are on a penalty kill here. And this player in the green circle goes to fire this puck. As you can see by the red arrow on the left side, Moose are on the penalty kill. In the red circle is Elias Salomonsson. He, for some reason, goes to bolt out of the zone in this scenario. And again, a lot can go wrong here. And it does go wrong. It ends up hitting the shin pad of the player, Elias Salomonsson. You see him in the red circle there, the black arrow. That's where the puck is, slowly drifting towards the slot. And Elias Salomonsson is unable to make a play on it because he was drifting up the ice. And this ends up being a backdoor goal. And Elias Salomonsson, again, on the penalty kill as a defenseman, you don't really want to get caught high when the puck is in the crease. And that's what ended up happening on this play. But we talked about it earlier, his ability to jump in the rush. He's a great skater. This is a scenario where maybe he thinks this puck's going to bounce off the wall and he's going to get maybe a 2-on-1 or a 2-on-2 opportunity with this forward that's alongside him. But unfortunately, the puck does hit a shin pad. Again, something goes wrong. You're on the penalty kill. These things happen. And he finds himself in a really inopportune position to make a play on this puck, and it ends up in the back of the Manitoba Moose net. So that's just another scenario in which Elias Salomonsson, while he is aggressive, while you do want to see these defensemen jump into the rush, something like a penalty kill, something like a 50-50 puck that's more 70-30 for the other team, those are the areas where you kind of want to see him rein it in a little bit, and where he maybe gets himself into trouble.
Yeah, and I think, with this aggression and kind of the pitfalls that can come with it, this is something that can be coached, and this is decision-making that can change and adapt, right? This is a new team for Elias Salomonsson. He hasn't played in the Winnipeg Jets organization for a team, so these are some things that, the learning curve may be slightly steep, but it's very much surmountable, right? This is, not some crazy huge drawback that this player will not be able to compensate for, will not be able to figure out. And so one last kind of example of this, that this is simply a misread, a decision-making play that, maybe in a few months, Elias Salomonsson will not make this play. I love this clip. It cracks me up. You can see there's Elias Salomonsson with his stick nice up in the air. This is a like kind of a bouncing puck that's coming. It was chipped out of the zone by the Milwaukee player. And this is a puck that, listen, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that I may have made a different decision in this particular situation, but puck's not very big. Neither is the shaft of your stick. The hand-eye coordination kind of fails Elias Salomonsson in this situation, and it may fail a lot of guys, but all of a sudden he's gone, right? There's a player coming in who is able to take that bouncing puck away from him, and Elias Salomonsson misses it, and okay, now it's your responsibility to kind of chase this player back into the zone. But he slows up, and I'm not exactly sure what the reason is for that. You can look and you can see that there are, three Manitoba Moose players up at the blue line here, including the right-handed defenseman, Elias Salomonsson, where the whole right side of the ice is open. And there's the player flying in on the wing, right? That's coming right in. Nobody is on him. That player gets that puck and scores immediately. So this is one of those situations where, again, the decision itself could be kind of benign. He could have smacked that. The player could have missed it. I think that's Vinny Hinostroza that ends up coming in and chasing that puck down. But it ends up having a really negative connotation. And when he also doesn't follow the puck all the way back into the zone, it turns into a situation that really didn't need to happen. And that's a decision that he may make differently next time. So those little split-second moments are kind of what we're judging Elias Salomonsson on right now. We'd like to see some changes kind of when it comes to some of the decisions he's making, at when to kind of jump up and when to kind of fall back and play that defensive position. So again, lots of really positive aspects of the player's game that have led to him having this confidence that he can do those things. And that confidence is really important to kind of hone in on and foster and ensure that he's still participating in all these things that he's really strong in. But sometimes in the learning process, this is why the AHL exists. This is why the farm team exists. We see that these mistakes can be costly.
Yes, and just before, again, I don't want to harp on one bad rep too much, but just before we move on, I want you to see the gap between Chaz Lucius here and Elias Salomonsson. Chaz Lucius is on the blue line, okay, while Elias Salomonsson goes to whack at this puck. Now Chaz Lucius is at the red line. Elias Salomonsson, flat-footed, whacked at the puck, missed it. Okay, now you're the defenseman. It's your job to get back and make this, a 2-on-2, which he's in prime position to do. If he's able to slide back, that might be Dylan Anhorn, I think, takes the puck. He's able to slide back, and it's a 2-on-2 at the absolute worst. But Chaz Lucius kind of gaps him here, and all three of these Moose players are just kind of standing. Their knees aren't bent. They're not trying to get back. The Milwaukee player looks to take advantage of that and beats all three of them. And look, the two forwards here, you can see, have kind of had an oh crap moment and are like trying last second to get to this puck. Elias Salomonsson is still gliding, and his knees still aren't bent. So I don't know what kind of was going through his mind here when he maybe didn't see that player and thought that he didn't have to go make this a 2-on-2 and play that play. But to go through these four clips and see Chaz Lucius at the blue line while Elias Salomonsson's whacking at it, to closer and then gapped him, and then the two forwards making the play on it and Elias Salomonsson still gliding. Again, don't want to harp on one rep too much, but it's not a good look. And it's those consistent moments that we want to see out of Elias Salomonsson that'll maybe help him take that next step. We actually asked Mark Morrison as well what Elias Salomonsson can do to take that next step this season. Here's what he had to say.
Well, it's just going to be consistency in his game, and for him to get as much experience and ice time as he can get here. And, experience will play itself out, and he'll learn from all different situations that he's playing in. And, we can see now already that he's getting better on a daily basis.
That was head coach Mark Morrison talking about the consistency that he wants to see from Elias Salomonsson. That's also what we're looking for. We talked about how more reps will help with his decision-making and adjust to, what the team is looking for and what sorts of decisions he needs to be making in order to put the Manitoba Moose in the best positions to succeed. That consistency only comes over time and having more reps. Elias Salomonsson is going to get that this year. We're only a few games into the Manitoba Moose season. They have a long year still to come. And that long year could get even longer when looking at some of the main competition they're going to be playing this year. This Central Division has a lot of really strong teams. We showed a lot of clips of the Milwaukee Admirals in this in this video so far. That's not by accident. It's a very, very strong team, and they're not the only ones. So these are a lot of the teams that the Manitoba Moose will be playing against a lot this year. And obviously, while it's still early, that win column is pretty populated here. So Elias Salomonsson is not going to have an easy workload this year, but that's what he wants. That's what we want for him. We want to see him get more opportunities to play these challenging roles and manage top competition at the level he's playing at. And he's going to get that this year. So it's going to be a really interesting season for Elias Salomonsson. And while we want this deep dive to serve as a primer for this player for you, there's a lot left to learn about him from this season. It's going to be a really big year for him to see if he can take that next step to hopefully becoming a viable prospect for the Winnipeg Jets to pull up into the right-handed defenseman position on the Winnipeg Jets when the situation arises.
And one thing I want to make clear before we kind of move into one thing to watch for going forward with Salomonsson is there is no doubt that he has drastically improved his game since being drafted. If you read any of the prospect gurus out there, maybe at The Athletic with Scott Wheeler, Corey Pronman, if there was a 2022 redraft, Elias Salomonsson would go in the first round. So there is a lot to like about Elias Salomonsson's game, but it's that consistency that we mentioned earlier that we really want to see come through in this season in the AHL. One thing that we want to ask you, the chat down below, let us know. Who do you think the best stylistic fit is for Elias Salomonsson long term? Here are all the left-handed defensemen, in the organization who could play with Elias Salomonsson on the Winnipeg Jets when he does make it. You've got Ville Heinola, you've got Josh Morrissey, you've got Logan Stanley, you've got Dylan Sandberg, you've got Hayden Fleury, and you've got the Jets' most recent second-round pick, Alphonse Frey, another left-handed defenseman. So we want to hear from you. Let us know in the comments down below, who do you think in the long term is the best stylistic fit for Elias Salomonsson? We brought up the strengths, we brought up the weaknesses. Who do you think will maybe mitigate some of those weaknesses and enhance those strengths when Salomonsson is able to make that jump into the NHL? Thank you everyone for watching this edition of WST Deep Dive. My name's Connor, she's Lyss. We love putting these episodes together. Let us know down in the comments below on that stylistic question. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and the notification bell so you don't miss all the deep dives in the future. And we're now on podcast, so if you like the podcast version, go find us there, WST Deep Dive, on your favorite podcast platform. We will see you next time. Thank you for watching the Elias Salomonsson Deep Dive. See ya.